Today, my ghoulishly delightful listeners, we have a very special episode suited for this October season. No doubt many of you are familiar with features like Tales from the Crypt Keeper or Gruesome Tales for Gruesome Kids. But I think we also need to consider the Chronicles and Confessions for Conjuring Cunning Folk. Today's episode is a collection of tales of chivalric heroes, the strange spirits. It's a selection of stories fearfully presented to you by a team here at the Frightful House. And included in our repository of tales first, we're going to regale you with a certain relation given by Richard Hillington of Northamptonshire. After which, an excerpt from the Voyage of St. Brendan, presented to you by our very own Master Bard Key. Following this, the lovely Lady Svinga shall present to you the Serbian fairy tale of the old man who outsmarted the giants. After this entertaining trilogy, we shall finish off with another from myself, the Old Witch, whilst Key will give the dialogue between Forst and the Earth Spirit from Garth's Forst. And Svinga will finish off with another Serbian fairy tale, the Young Tsarevich and the Izdaya. These stories are diverse in origin, not necessarily intended to be frightening, but hopefully, nonetheless, I hope somewhat enlightening and suitable for the season. But before we talk about ghosts and fables, a little hair manalig is in order.
Be not alarmed at the frightful howls which you may hear. It's Svinga, Salt, and Bardic Key.
Hello, hello.
I know, it was what a little spooky little October Halloween adventure for all of us is that we're doing a story time episode. Hardest
Oh,
one possibly to date to figure out which stories.
yeah.
Real, real.
Yeah, so you were trying so hard to figure out like which English fairy tales to include, and we don't have like that much time. You know what I mean? Because we want to like obviously talk about them and the kind of magical insights we can gain from them. But we've been thinking about doing like a movie episode where we analyze like a movie for a while. Um, you guys know how I feel about November.
Yeah, yeah. Called
Yeah,
Talk Crot Generation.
literally, yeah. Krat generating key. But also, there's so many great Serbian ones that I want to tell, and not just Serbian ones, but different kinds of Slavic and Balkan ones. So we're gonna give this a little shot. I also have told quite a few Serbian fairy tales across classes that I've given at Salem Witchcraft and Folklore Festival, Vritis Genie, and a few other locations where I presented. So I really was like, we got to do ones that unfortunately have nothing to do with the usual stuff that I present on. And yet there is still a dragon in one, although not as my, it is an Ishdaya. Ah, sometimes you're a one-trick pony, you know?
Never escape the dragons.
Oh God, don't I know it?
Hey,
But
it's consistent.
it is consistent. And then of course, Key, I mean, what a shock that you chose apart from Faust's in Goethe's play.
Can't escape my Germanic grimoires.
No, nor Saint Brendan.
No, it will quite literally go to the ends of the earth to find you. So
Hmm. But we will be doing other story episodes. Like, so don't worry if the six that we present today, are you're like, oh, I want more. Please tell more dragon ones, tell vampire ones, and so on and so forth. We will. Plenty more to come. It'll be probably like a recurring segment, especially if we do some media analysis ones. Because that's one of those things, is like it's not all just folklore presented neutrally. Like most folklore comes to us from fairy tales and stories.
yeah. Like we can, through all of these, glean a lot about the ways that humans interact with spirits, spirits interact with humans, and just kind of what to do and how not to mess up.
Exactly. But first, a little housekeeping. Remember to check us out at twitter.com/frightful howls and patreon.com/The Frightful Howls. We have one tier. It is $10 a month. For that, you get a lot of stuff. A bonus episode every month, curated by and for you, our patrons. A Discord server, which is always popping off. Lots of scrying practice, lots of memes, lots of pretty Fire Flames music recommendations, and fun little folklore dumps. We have Salt's Fantastic Almanac, a monthly Lava Cult book club where we discuss a text of your choosing. At long last, we're doing The Supernatural by Jeffrey Kripal. And
Yay.
Whitley Strieber, and it's all thanks to Key and Rose Aurora, our good friend of the show, having been on Radical Fame recently, talking about psi phenomena and remote viewing and aliens, and that's why this book finally got voted.
Oh yeah, it's time.
It's time. But yeah, in addition to all this cool stuff, from planning your life out every month with the almanac and getting to hang out with us in a Discord, which in sometimes Key even hops on there and streams Elden Ring, and the bonus Q&A episode. We also get show notes for every episode and lots more. And please remember to give us a like, rating, and review on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you may be listening to us. It helps us fight the demiurgic algorithm, the demiurgically demure mind of the algorithm. Stay Thunder Perfect Mindful. God, that Coptic episode. So many people texted us about the Thunder Perfect Mindful. I swear to God, it burst out.
Much like the thunder, it burst forth from the perfect mind.
Yeah, of the Gnosticism. Exactly. Also, check out our services. He offers personalized coaching in magic and mediumship. He does sorcery for hire. He does cartomancy readings. He'll make you a custom talisman, an oil, a tool of any kind. He's crafty. He can do it all. He's a jack of all trades and a master of most of them.
Thank you.
I humbly offer my Balkan Fabimancy readings. Stay tuned for some interesting amulets that I'll be offering as well on withcunningcommand.com. And Salt's books are closed right now for astrology, but keep an eye out for his monthly almanac on the Patreon, which is always going strong. And lastly, hit us up on social media. I can be found at Dragon Cunning, because I'm predictable. Salt is at Salt C and C, and Key is barnowl.key. The B stands for Barnowl on the Instagram. Okay, so we mentioned, the purpose of this was kind of like as a little tongue-in-cheek Halloween gift, but also we've talked a lot amongst ourselves and a little bit on the podcast about the importance of looking at fairy tales. And actually, having had on guests like Mohegan and Rose, where we pulled on French Canadian and Celtic folklore, it's been really interesting to talk a little bit about what can we learn about spirit interactions from the fairy tales themselves? So, gather a little hot cocoa or some tea, get your pumpkin spice latte going, because we're going to chat a little bit about 6 tales from different cultural regions that really reflect the three of us and our cultural backgrounds. And what kind of insights into how to be better magicians and better spirit workers we can glean from these.
Yeah, it's exciting, right? I think as well, when we talk about folk tales, we can think about it both in the oral sense and also in the literary, right? We have the entire genre of Hell coercion books in Germany coming up related to Faust. And then we have, mentions to Oberon in ritual magic within Britain as well as France. There's definitely a very strong overlap within pretty much every single sphere of magic that, comes from Europe. And it just makes it all the more exciting to explore.
Yeah, not to mention Shakespeare, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Midsummer Night's Dream and Macbeth are so canonical in so many ways, actually.
Also paralleling that, you gotta rep Faust from Goethe.
Yeah, Marlowe, Goethe, everybody, and being the author of so many Germanic grimoires like through pseudepigraphy and the Hohenzwang genre being such a huge thing about coercing. The coercion of hell is really about forcing demons to do your bidding.
And also the structuring of these, I guess, so-called Faustian manuscripts to, make really intimate pacts with familiars who then go out and do your bidding and bring you all those good things in the world. But at what cost? We'll find out.
Very true. Yeah, stay tuned for the end to find out, exactly what happens. Well, let's just dive into it. Because we'll always talk about each story afterwards. But so why this particular story is it the one that you chose for the first one?
So I chose it partly because we had a Q&A question recently asking about treasure spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And this one kind of does relate to like popular perceptions of spirits and hidden money or hidden treasure, right? And there's also, you got the good old fashioned necromancy. You have revelations from a ghost, right? As well as a bit of insistence and strong armedness from him. So I don't know, this one to me just felt fun. I was spent all morning poring over some like early modern ghost story pamphlets and similar texts, and this one was kind of the one that stood out most. Also, I just kind of like the way it's written. So this is a relation of the strange and wonderful appearance of a spirit to Richard Hillington in Northamptonshire, a pamphlet from 1662. Good people, all pray listen well. I'll lay open to your view a tale most wonderful and strange, and it is known for to be true. You have heard of spirits for the walk, though many be you here did see, and with some men do seem to talk about their hidden treasury. As by this story very strange, to which to you I shall declare, of Richard Clark of Illington, the town that's in Northamptonshire. This man a farmer is 'tis known, and well beloved of his neighbours by, though he lives not on his own, yet he doth live sufficiently. About that house where he did dwell, a spirit did appear also, which did amaze him very much, for it was murdered long ago. Now the spirit, much amazement bred, as it did walk to and again, his cattle it much troubled, because it could not speak with him. For when he walked the yard each night, either was untied his shoe or hose, or else unbuttoned it had no power, what it walked for to disclose. But it finding an opportunity, one night he turned his malt flowery, 'twas else he went more speedily, but he did meet him at the door. Into the orchard it him shoved. In the name of Jesus Christ, said he, crying out was much amazed. Whither wilt thou shove me? Be not afraid, the spirit said. No harm shall come to thee at all, but to thee I must declare my mind, and look thou dost fulfil it all. 267 years since a servant man there did him slay, but conjured down it now appears as a spirit unto him did say, I was a man the which was killed 267 years ago by a servant man that dwelled here, for that I had the truth is so. He also did cut off my head and wounded me so sore, and in this place me buried. What could he against me done more? Then after I was conjured down for so many years as I tell thee, but now my time is expired, and foul my messenger must be. Prepare and go thy way, said he, to Southwark I'll be thy guide, to such a house to set things straight, which I did so long did bide. And in a cellar thou shalt find some money and some whitings too. To the right owner thou shalt them give. I'll be with thee to place the shoe. So go thy ways unto thy house, and mark these words that are so plain. Be sure you perform all what I say, but do not you look back again. So he went to London with speed, and on his journey made no stay. Much like a man of 40 years, the spirit met him by the way. Smiling unto him it said, What on thy journey thou didst go? And upon London Bridge again, the spirit met him there also. And to the house in Southwark the spirit it did him convey, and was his guide to go with him, and would not let him make no stay. But when he came unto the house, he declared the thing in solemn wise, and when the woman was sent for, the tears did trickle from her eyes. Then into the cellar he did go, and digged not 2 foot into the ground, whereas the spirit did him show, and there the money straight he found. In a brass pan this money was, in writings in the same did lie, but the papers did crumble away, so that they could not from them descry. But the parchment it was safe and sound, the which did signify some land, but the money was so eaten with rust, the same they could not understand. So the money and the writings too, to this poor woman he did give, who from that relation did spring out, who at his hand did it receive. The spirit stood by all the while, and gave him directions what to do, that he should no ways her beguile, the which the same belonged unto. And when its mind he had fulfilled, the spirit vanished away, unto the place whence it came, seen no more unto this day. Thus, friends and neighbours, you do see, the wilful murder will come out, though it be done not so long ago, yet time and years will bring it about. Therefore let's fear the Lord and I, though we may be of the flock which Christ hath, and when we need not fear to die, our souls will no doubt be at rest. So, to conclude what here is said, and is laid open to your view, though it be a story strange, but hundreds know it to be true.
I love that. I love the rhyme. Not most of what we're
Mhm.
reading today is not in rhyme. It's in like prose as opposed to verse, but this is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's a really it's a fun story. Like I love the money. I love the fact that the money is like rusted, right? Like it's not contemporary money, it's like old money. Like this is how you know it's a ghost, right?
I love money.
Yeah. Who
Okay,
doesn't?
real talk though. Yeah, well, one of our, well, two things actually. One, the spirit said, "Be not afraid."
A roll
A
credits.
podcast mentioned. Yeah, yeah, roll credits. Two, I mean, very, very true for many spirits. They do be saying that when upon showing up.
Mhm.
Two, one of the early book clubs we did this year for our Patreon was actually on Graveyard Wanderers by Tom Johnson. And one of the things that was so interesting about that book is like obviously you're borrowing the dead, right? You're taking bones from cemeteries and you're wielding them and asking the spirits to find you things, treasure or love, whatever it is that you want. And in this case, you have a very necromantic encounter, right? That even has the spirit directly explain what happened to him.
And the reverse nature of it, right? Like the fact that the spirit's the one coming to him and making this appeal
Mhm.
as
But
well.
it also,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it also makes sense because he says that, his head was cut off. It's a brutal death. He's obviously restless, right? He can't necessarily find peace.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's
Also,
also the need to care for the descendants, right? Like
Yeah.
the as
mhm.
presumably family members who are now living in poverty.
Yeah, yeah. I love the progression here of like the phenomena that the spirit starts to produce as well to even get his attention. Where it's like it begins with his cattle being messed with, then it goes to like mild inconveniences, then it becomes more major inconveniences, and then eventually he just shows up and is like, dude, listen to me. I have things to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a fun one. The I think as well, like the mention of the crime itself, like Svinga was saying, like the violent death and just the need, right? Like this is something we see even today in like modern ghost stories or like modern horrors. This idea that he's dead, he's come back because there's something that needs to be resolved before he can move on. But here we also see, right, he's got a time limit. He's only got so long left as a ghost, I guess, which I find kind of an interesting concept as well.
I know all three of us have had the experience of a dead person coming up to us to give us a side quest.
Real.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be crass about it. I just mean like this was happening to me as a kid a lot, and I ended up doing a lot of like accidental investigative journalism on behalf of some dead people. One really accosted me in junior high school, and it was consistently the same person, and he always seemed burnt. And he desperately wanted to remember what he looked like. Like his task for me was to figure out what happened to him, and I felt like a little spirit detective. So yeah, like that Neil Gaiman like Netflix show, like Dead Boy Detectives. It was a little bit
Yeah.
like that, but I was trying to like, what on earth is going on? It turns out he kept saying he died in a fire, or the last thing he remembers is fire, I should say. And he just wanted to remember what he looked like. So sometimes I'm sure you guys have had this experience, but like certain traumatized spirits genuinely forget their form.
Mhm.
And so I did not know who this guy was, and I just wanted to go to junior high school. But I knew something was up, and so I asked one of my spirits for help, and we ended up tracking down like a newspaper fragment that he had indeed lived in a home that is quite literally the most like adjacent neighborhood to the building of where the school was. And it had burned down. So I found like an obituary photograph of him and his family. And I showed it to him in the place in like near the back part of the school parking lot where I kept finding him, which actually was over that fence where the building was. It's just that it was obviously built back now, like this was many years ago. And once I left it there with an offering, like I think I literally just took some of my like cafeteria lunch and like brought it there and like in a circle. Like I was like 13, keep in mind. I was doing my best. And he was fine afterwards. Like he never bothered me again. Like he seemed to move on at some point. So sometimes the treasure is quite literally their identity. And that was what enough to like get him to be remembered and move on.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
whatever fragment of him, like obviously just a part of him that's probably buried in his grave, but like whatever fragment of him that was that needed succor, like I wasn't special. Like he was just going to the only person who could hear and see him. Like if not me, it would have been some other person.
Hmm. Hmm. Which is always fun to give that relief.
Hmm.
The I had a lot of those when I was doing like radio stuff as well. So I would just be alone speaking into a room at, 2 in the morning, and people would stop by and be like, tell me about the news. What happened today?
Hmm.
Or just like, go over to this part of town, you'll find something kind of weird that we want you to take a look at. I'm
Is
like,
that how
cool.
you started treasure hunting?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Them and Mr. Chris.
Mr. Christopher, the saint
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
And
big
just
dog.
having yeah, just kind of exploring that side of things and stumbling my way into a very lovely sort of pan-Germanic treasure hunting practice with such a man.
Which, speaking of which, we will be doing a treasure hunting episode at some point. But for those who can't wait for that, check out the book by Johannes Dillinger called Magical Treasure Hunting in Europe and North America.
Yeah, one of the most fantastic English language examinations of all of that.
Hmm.
Um, love the section on the Saint Christopher himself and Saint Corona,
Hmm.
um, before she was the patron of recent events. She's the patron of finding treasure.
You know, so much of plant lore, of like, why does this plant work with this deity, is based on puns, similar names, or like a story, like a folk tale that, like, you think, like, wait a second, this particular tree or root or whatever, or like plant doesn't seem to have anything in common with this particular spirit or deity. Like, it seems like they're not actually sharing many characteristics in common. And it's because there's a folk tale that, like, that god tripped over this plant once. And like that's it. Like it doesn't have to be much deeper than that. Like sometimes like
Right.
plants just get associated with things that way. Same like with places in nature. It's just like that's where it happened. And so I love the mention at the end of the story, Salt of the London Bridge, too.
Yeah, it's got I mean location's very central to the story, right? Like
Yeah.
he's from Northamptonshire.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's one of the reasons why when I relate like Balkan folk tales and oral lore, I try and specify which region it's from.
Hmm.
And some of the people who are from Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, and other countries in the Balkan Peninsula message me on Instagram and are like, "Oh, I'm actually from this region. We have a very similar tale," which is always fun because like I love like being able to be like nerding out with other people from this area because we have such great folklore, and
Yeah.
I love every single country. It's like lore. I love comparing it. I love seeing like regional differences. It's just so beautiful.
Hmm. It's there was a Brazilian linguist that I was reading the other night who had a wonderful quote about language that applies very much so to magic. Variation is evidence of vibrancy.
Yes, exactly. But sometimes spirits do be finding you. It's they give you the side quests because instead of you soliciting them, which I think often the emphasis in ritual magic is like you going out of your way to solicit a spirit or to go make a pact with them or to, find a spirit to make it your familiar or purchasing someone's grave dirt or bones. And by purchasing, I do mean robbing. But you leave a coin behind, you leave some bread behind, or in the case of a lot of like necromancy, you just take it and then you give it back when you're done. Like that's you force the spirit to go along with you until you return the bone. It's a kind of like very saintly torture, kind of like removing the little baby from Saint Joseph.
Hmm. I think if people are stealing my tibia, it's a decent way to get me to do something.
Keys like, and that's why my grave will be guarded by alarms and laser
Hmm.
beams and a bunch of patrolling men in armed in armor with Glock 9 millimeters, all that stuff. Yeah,
Why are those muscular men's shirts a little unbuttoned?
that's so
You
that you can be a happy ghost when you're
know.
when you're off in the in the afterlife. That's why they all have cleavage showing.
Oh man. But that's the thing about a lot of necromantic encounters in the day to day. Sometimes it's just not even about you. It's just whatever that
Hmm.
ghost wants, and you happen to be at right place, right time.
Hmm. Or they just like happen to manifest physically in that moment, or like you, I need this. And assuming you're not too scared to do it, now you're a designated, quest carrier. I'm like not trying to be chummy about it. It's just it's happened so often that at this point I'm like, ah, yes, the time knife, we know about
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes they're just curious as well. Like when it's a place that they tend to habituate, right? Like they see things going on, they want to know what's going on in the surrounding area as well. Like I had a local church, the rector's wife, from I think it was the 18th century, appeared and she just wanted to know what was going on. Like, hey, what's up in the local area? Like, it's different now. What the fuck?
No,
What?
she's literally like, what's the gossip?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the walking up to you like the innkeeper in every fantasy role playing game.
Hmm.
Just, have you heard anything interesting recently?
Hmm.
Exactly.
Works on ghosts too, just saying.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, literally, like going up and being like, "Hey, what's the gossip?" People will tell you, ghosts especially, they're very chatty. Don't believe everything they say. Also, when they say it's happening right now, you have no idea of knowing unless you really interrogate them if they mean like present day, present time, serial experiments lane moment, or if they mean like in 1780, which they still think is today. That's one of those things with like restless spirits or those that are really pinned down. Like I often run into this with cases of spirits that died in like crossings because of a car accident. Like they are so stuck, like the entire crossroad will feel gooey. Like I want to leave an offering and it's just not moving. I feel like this sense of like tragedy and grief and shock or pain in my chest. And so I might have to do some remediation work or like pour out some offerings, call on some, crossroads guardians to clear up the space and help that spirit move. Or if I want to do nasty things.
Nasty.
I might be like, that's a great dirt. I need, seven of those of, where people died or something like that.
Mhm. Gotta love me that slimy dirt.
God, it does feel that way, even if it's dry. Like there's still, oh, it's horrible. That's why I usually like cover the jars where I keep that kind of dirt, especially dirt of like tragic accidents and killings, in black cloth, just so no light reaches it, and so it's marked apart from my other ones.
Yeah, yeah. I got my full box of art that's just the dirts that are kept under lock and key for good reason.
I love that it's a toolbox. Key's not kidding about that. It's quite literally like a toolbox.
Oh man, should put some of those in a gun safe. That would be funny.
You
Listen,
you you have one for a reason, and it's not just your gun.
listen, nothing wrong with a bit of soil, blood, and black powder. And if the Cavalier ghost, if you point at the guy who was rude to you and say, "Hey, that's Cromwell," there's nothing wrong with that.
Literally. Get him, girls.
I'm like the rocks from the tomb of Bloody Mackenzie in Scotland. Let's put those maybe 2 feet away from the black powder.
Oh my God, could
Just
you imagine?
outside.
Good God.
Nasty.
Nasty. Also, I love that you're just like, I'm just so mask. I have everything in toolboxes and gun saves.
It just happens. It's the industrial dock at my work likes to discard those things when they get old. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, free container,
Mm-hmm.
which is love of free container.
Listen, just all magicians should have a pelican case.
Yeah, yeah. Postmaster's desk type containment units.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, speaking of necromancy, Key, tell us about your choice.
Yeah, so to kick it off, one of my personal favorites that we've obliquely referenced and teased various times before in the podcast, but this is the voyage of St. Brendan the Abbot, or the voyage of St. Brendan the Navigator, depending on how it's translated. I'm relying on the 1893 O'Donoghue translation into English, but this story really goes back to, if I remember correctly, the 9th century is the earliest examples of it in text. So it probably evolved from um, stories known to be very popular in Ireland at the time in around 700. But this focuses on a seafaring voyage of St. Brendan, who is now the patron of those who go by water, seafarers, most of the world's navies, sometimes fishermen, depending, and those voyaging for one reason or another. But this is chapter 25, which is my personal favorite for reasons that will become very obvious. After this dreadful sight, they sailed for 7 days toward the south, and then St. Brendan observed a very dense cloud, on approaching which there came into view what had the shape of a man, sitting on a rock, with a veil before him as large as a sack, hanging between two iron prongs. And he was tossed about like a small boat in a storm. When the brethren saw this, some thought it was a bird, others that it was a boat. But the man of God told them to cease the discussion and to steer directly for the place, where, on his arrival, he finds the waves all around motionless, as if frozen over. They found a man sitting on a rugged and shapeless rock, with the waves on every side, which in their flowing beat upon him, even to the top of his head, and in their ebbing exposed the bare rock on which the wretched man was sitting. And the cloth which hung before him, as the winds tossed it about, struck him on the eyes and on the forehead. When the saint asked him who he was, for what crime he was sent there, and how he had deserved to suffer so great a punishment, he answered,
I am that most unhappy Judas, the most wicked of all traffickers. Not for any deserving of mine, but through the unspeakable mercy of Jesus Christ, I am placed here. I expect no place for repentance, but through the forbearance and mercy of the Redeemer of the world, and in honor of his resurrection, I have this cooling relief. It is as it is now the Lord's Day. While I sit here, I seem to myself to be in a paradise of delights, considering the agony of the torments that are in store for me afterwards. For when I am in my torments, I burn like a mass of molten lead, day and night, in the heart of that mountain you have seen. There Leviathan and his satellites dwell, and there was I when it swallowed down your lost brother, for which all hell exulted, and belched forth great flames, as it always does, when it devours the souls of the reprobate. But that you may know the boundless mercy of God, I will tell you of the refreshing coolness I have here every Sunday, from the first Vespers to the second, from Christmas Day to Epiphany, from Easter to Pentecost, on the purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and on the festival of her Assumption. On all other days I am in torments with Herod and Pilate, with Annas and Caiaphas, and therefore I adjure you, through the Redeemer of the world, to intercede for me with the Lord Jesus Christ, that I may remain here until the sunrise tomorrow, and that the demons, because of your coming here, may not torment me, nor sooner drag me off to my heritage of pain, which I purchased at an evil price.
The saint then said,
The will of the Lord be done. You will not be taken away by the demons until tomorrow.
and he asked him what meant that cloth in front of him. Judas replied,
This cloth I once gave to a leper, when I was the purse-bearer of the Lord, but as it was not my own, I find no relief from it, but rather hurt. Those iron prongs on which it hangs, I once gave to the priests for supporting their cauldrons, and the stone on which I am sitting, I placed in the trench on a public road before I became a disciple of the Lord's.
When evening came, a multitude of demons gathered around in a circle, shouting,
Depart from us, O man of God, for we cannot come near our comrade unless you retire from him, and we dare not see the face of our prince until we bring back to him his pet victim. Give us, therefore, our prey, and keep it not from us this night.
The saint then said,
I protect him not, but the Lord Jesus Christ has permitted him to remain here this night.
The demons cried out,
How could you invoke the name of the Lord on behalf of him who had betrayed him?
The man of God then commanded them, in the name of Jesus Christ, to do him no hurt until morning. When the night had passed, at early dawn, when St. Brendan was proceeding on his way, a countless multitude of demons covered the face of the deep, uttering dreadful cries.
O man of God, accursed be thy coming and thy going, for our chief has this night scourged us with cruel stripes, because we had not brought back his wretched captive.
Not on us,
Said the saint.
but on yourselves shall those curses be, for blessed is he whom you curse, and accursed is he whom you bless.
The demons then shouted.
He will suffer double punishment for the next 6 days, because you have saved him from his punishment last night.
But the man of God warned them.
You have not power, neither has your chief, only whatever power God may give you, and I command you in the name of the Lord that you increase not his torments beyond those you are wont to inflict before.
Are you,
Said they.
the Lord of all, that we should thus obey your command?
No,
Rejoined the saint.
but I am the servant of the Lord of all, and whatsoever I command in his name, it is done. And I am his minister only in what he grants to me.
In this manner, they pursued him with their blasphemies until he was far away from Judas, and they bore off his wretched soul with great rushing and howling. Frightful howls mentioned.
Frightful Howls mentioned 2 out of 2 so far. God, could you imagine if all the other ones had that too? I don't think they do, but
Oh man, unintentional, by the way.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Okay, first of all, great excerpt, great scene. Secondly, Salt can't help but do his conjuration voice. As soon as he had to do the you have no power part, I was like, oh, it's
Mhm.
coming, it's coming.
Habits.
I know, I know. And thirdly, if you like Saint Brendan and if you like Icy Hot Judas, aka we nicknamed him that because of the half, frozen, half like boiling hot state that he's in, check out episode 35, Dutch Folk Magic with Caspar. Because we have a whole discussion a little bit there where Key pops off about Saint Brendan and Judas.
Oh yeah, more to come about these gentlemen. Um, but there are a couple fantastic things in here. Being I guess to start at the end, the wonderful exorcistic dialogue between the saint and the horde from the deep. Um,
Literally.
the constraining them even when they wish to punish the sinners to follow their instructions, reminding everyone to keep the demons in their place. And even the way that they taunt Brendan in his role as the exorcist. Like, why do we have to obey you? We only obey God. And it's like, well.
I know, I know. But also that is so Acts 19:15. Like when the evil spirit says, Jesus I know and Paul I recognize, but who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Girl, who are you? Why are you exercising me? Who are you? And you can be like, I'm King Solomon. I'm Saint Cyprian of Antioch. I'm actually, Moses. And it's just like, great, prove it. Which, I am Pharaoh, and also Enophorus, whom none hath ever seen. But
I am Agrippa.
yeah, literally. I am actually literally Agrippa. I am Trithemius, not Nine. Listen, you gotta prove it. So take on the god form, do the fasting, do the purification. Sword of Moses was one of our book club books, if you want to learn a little bit about that.
And make
Yeah.
sure, I think as well, one really key point here. If a Roman offers you 30 coins, don't take it.
Oh, that's so true. Okay, fucking real. There is actually a really good TV show called 30 Coins. It's Spanish. So it's 30 monedas. It's so good and it's literally all about actually like this whole trope of 30 coins that Judas was paid for betraying Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
The money you don't want the treasure hunting spirits to bring you.
Literally, they're like, not that one.
Yeah. And for those who decide it is that one, um, in one of my oldest posts on With Cunning and Command, I give a recipe to make cursed and evil pieces of silver be bartered for various ends.
That's because you're an alchemist and you fear nothing.
Yeah.
He's actively giving himself mercury poisoning just to feel something because he's such an adrenaline junkie. So don't necessarily listen to him. But all memes aside, this is such a good story. I mean, the whole thing, the saga is long. This is just an excerpt from it, but this is such a great part of it, and I love the idea of like leveraging Judas's possible like staving off his punishment as opposed to necessarily his redemption. So there are aspects of Balkan folklore that see Judas as the prince of all vampires because he hung himself from a tree after realizing what he had done. And so as a result, the tree itself became a vampire tree, and just many lore on like what is the tree he hung himself on, just like it shifts from story to story. There are some common ones, but like nevertheless it does shift with the regions. But there's also this idea that there's these children of Judas that are born of his like hangman seed. Because like it can birth a mandrake, right? It's like the sperm that is
Mhm.
released by a hangman, but also it can birth vampires. And so this idea that like Judas's seed spilled forth and birthed a bunch of vampires that are now essentially arc vampires. We sometimes call them pravampiri, which just literally means arc vampire, which sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons class. But it is really there's like, there's so much lore that is actually not very well documented in the literature, but is very well documented if you know who to talk to. Especially I've noticed in northwestern Serbia, we have a lot of this folklore specifically
Mhm.
about these children of Judas and the Vampiri that are born from him, and him as a kind of like pseudo dark saint. One thing that I find really interesting about the story is he names when he has his reprieve, right? And so he
Right.
says, every Sunday from the first Vespers to the second. Okay, that makes sense. From Christmas Day to Epiphany, those are the unbaptized days for us, like in the
Mhm.
Balkan context. So for us, especially in the Orthodox calendar, that would be January 7th would be our Christmas. So after that to Epiphany, January 19th, that is the unbaptized days. Those are the days of the vampires.
Mhm. Yeah, just seeing it mirrored here, I was like, "Oh shit, we're onto something."
Mhm.
Because he's out of hell. He's walking the earth. If
Exactly, exactly. So it's funny that this is a time when he has reprieve. It's precisely during a time that all like the nasty evil ghouls, like the Karankonchole and the Nekrshtenci, like the unbaptized children, which have like babies' heads and like raven bodies, or sometimes they're called the Drekavats as well, the Drekavci, which like the screamers, the screechers, like all of these, goblins and ghouls are out doing their mischief. And so is Judas. He's finally,
Mhm.
Taking a
he's
break
out
from
of
wailing on
the
him.
yeah, exactly. They're finally taking a break from like not whipping him. And then meanwhile, also a little Faustian Hollenswang tip. Sometimes the demons just get punished by their higher ups for not
Mhm.
fulfilling their job. So when you threaten them with that, just know you're participating in that hierarchy. Like, don't be shy. You don't have to be BDSM key to enjoy whipping a demon. You can, you can just be like, not the writing crop of art, but like all jokes aside, like there is a reason those coercion techniques work on them, right? There are ways to
Mhm.
pact in subtler ways and with ways that recognize existing bonds, but like there's a reason for digression. It is because that is what is responded to by their own superiors.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a very punitive nature amongst themselves. That's just their culture.
Hmm.
And I think as well, like I just love like the schoolyard kind of vibe here, where it's like you're fucking dead for snitching. the
Hmm.
it's I don't know, it's just funny, like
Mhm.
petty, I guess, which is I guess on tone.
I mean, so many spirits are petty.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. 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 Also, just to note with this story, if for whatever reason need to get things into and out of hell, let's just say we now know of someone who can do that.
That is such a good point. Reverse hell necromancy with Judas.
Mhm. And you know, he's right there with Herod and Pilate and Annas and Caiaphas, figures of their own renown, shall we say.
Hmm.
And we know this to be now an intercessor for those forces. If you want to get nice and spicy with it. Um,
Yes, and if you're lucky, this cast of characters will absolutely sing Jesus Christ Superstar for you.
Oh yeah, that's the icy hot part of the equation.
Yeah. Mr. Day and Mr. Night, the Dayquil Nyquil guy.
Actually, I think that's one of their punishments, right? They have to perform it every night.
Oh no.
they're all just whipped at the end. I'll
Mhm.
interview with a vampire.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yes. Nasty.
Nasty.
All right, down boy, enough of that key.
Oh man. The some of the other interesting things, speaking of torments, is the implements of his suffering upon the earth that he deems himself to be uh, quite a relief when compared to the torments that hell has to offer for him. But the sackcloth that he gave as charity, iron prongs that he gave as charity, and a stone that he gave as charity. So there's like an interesting triplicity happening here of good acts that he can find salvation in. That has been fun to explore, why those implements, what do they do, and how they go about coming to be.
Absolutely. God, such a good pick. Well done, Key.
Thank you, thank you.
So I'm gonna do two stories from the same collection. These are stories that were collected by our very famous philologist, anthropologist, and linguist, who also was a major reformer of the modern Serbian language. So the reason we have the Cyrillic alphabet the way we do is thanks to him. And he was in correspondence with the Brothers Grimm and was essentially, I would say, the foremost collector of oral folk tales. He went around Serbia and collected so many different kinds of versions of the same stories, as well as epic poems and the kind of ballads and epics that really parallel the tenure of stories that are quite legendary in the West, like Beowulf, for example. Like we have just as many really important ones, and they're often even longer, but very rarely are they translated into English. So there's plenty of different translations of Karadzic's work. The one that I'm relying on today. So normally I've given summaries or retellings because I find that these are oral stories, so they're good to be retold orally from memory in plenty of the classes that I've done under my legal name. But one of the things that I want to do this time is I obviously, since I have Key and Salt doing voices for it, is I have excerpts from a collection called Serbian Fairy Tales. It was published by Flying Fish Publications, and it was translated and introduced by Jelena Čurčić, who did a really excellent job. Like I compared this to the originals, and she did a really good job of translating the spirit of the story and not just the word for word literal meaning. So the first one that I'm going to start with is called The Old Man Who Outsmarted the Giants. And I'm really excited about this one. It's I tried to pick one that does not have dragons in it. Or vampires or fairies, and giants is great. Divavi are an excellent spirit species or type or whatever you want to call them, class of folkloric being that I'm really excited to talk a little bit about at the end. So we're going to get into the story first, and then you'll hear a little bit about why I chose it. Once upon a time, there lived an old man who was a miller. The miller had lots of young children, and he lived with his children in his watermill. One evening, a giant appeared out of nowhere and went straight for the mill. He bid good evening and God's help to the old man, and asked him if he could stay the night there. The old man offered him lodgings for the night, but the giant was intent on killing the old man and taking over his mill. He stayed the night there, and in the morning, the old man said to the giant,
So, you had your lodgings for the night. Now God help thee, and fare thee well.
but the giant replied,
Whichever one of us is stronger shall remain as the lord of this place.
All right then, if that is what you wish,
said the old man.
I have nothing to fear.
Then the giant challenged him to a wrestle, but the old man responded thus.
That is nothing for me. We shall instead pick up a stone each and squeeze it in our hands until the water comes running out of it.
The giant accepted this wager, grabbed the great big stone, and squeezed it so hard that it crumbled to dust, but not a drop of water came out of it. Then the old man, pretending to take a stone, grasped a lump of fresh, mild white cheese, squeezed it, and lo and behold, water came running out. The giant was mightily baffled by this, and said to the old man,
Fee, fi, fo, fum.
That's not what he said. I love it.
Well,
The giant was mightily baffled by this and said to the old man,
well, since you are so strong and so tough, such a hero of formidable strength, you should come with me to my cave. There are 8 other giants there, and each one of them is stronger than me. So they always make me go and run errands for them, as if I were the youngest. When we get to the cave, you will become the leader, and I will be next in line. So the rest of the giants will listen to and respect us both. As the leader, you will have everything to your heart's content and more. Just say what you want, and the giants will serve you as their elder.
The old man agreed to go to the giant's cave, and so they set forth. Along the way, they came upon the cherry tree in season, heavy with ripe red fruit. And as soon as the giant saw it, he jumped up on it and beckoned the old man to join him. To this, the old man replied,
I do not feel like climbing up. Will you lower a branch for me so I can sit down and rest a bit?
The giant did as the old man asked, bent and lowered the branch for him to sit on. But no sooner did the old man sit on it than the branch bounced up and flung our old man over the cherry tree and into a bush, where there happened to be a hare. And in the fear and commotion, the old man squashed the hare. Seeing this, the giant laughed heartily and asked the old man what on earth happened to him. The old man said how from the top of the cherry tree he spotted a hare in the bush, and so he jumped from the tree to catch the hare for their dinner. Now the giant marveled even more at this display of virility, and he felt intimidated. Thence they continued their journey, and finally they reached a cave. There they found the other 8 giants, and the old man greeted them all. The first giant then recounted all the old man's heroics, and the group agreed that he be their leader, and that they treat him as their elder. But when the old man began ordering and demanding not only what they had and could do, but also what they didn't have and couldn't do, the giants began to resent this and to plot a way to get rid of him. At first, they tested his strength. He had to prove he was as mighty a hero as their weakest brother had claimed and would let have them believe. So they went out to a nearby meadow and held a boulder hurling contest. The giants all picked a huge boulder each and tossed them off their shoulders as if they were nothing but mere eggs. When it was the old man's turn, he began eyeing up the biggest of the boulders in the field, walked over to it, rolled up his sleeves, and gazed over at the mountain tops in the distance. The giants then inquired what he was looking at, and the old man answered,
I'm looking to see which hilltop to chuck this pebble over.
When the giants heard this, they looked at each other in bewilderment and asked the old man not to throw this boulder, as it was the best and biggest one around, and they weren't keen on parting with it. But the old man said,
I will either have it my way or no way at all.
The giants then agree that he should not throw the boulder, and they will admit that he is the winner of the contest and the strongest one among them all. Another time, they went to fetch water from Mounting Spring. The giants took a huge wineskin each, and the old man took a shovel. As the giants filled up their huge wineskins with water, the old man began digging around the spring. The giants looked at each other in bewilderment and inquired what the old man was up to. The old man said,
Why go fetch the water all the time when we can simply dig the spring out, carry it over to the cave, and drink it all up in but a few days?
When the giants heard this, they were greatly alarmed at the thought of losing their spring, and they demanded that the old man leave it be. But the old man said,
I will either have it my way or no way at all.
The giants then agree that he should not dig the spring up, and they will admit that he is the winner of the contest and the strongest one among them all. The following day, they all went to fetch firewood. The giants pulled and uprooted a beech tree each, tossed it over their shoulders, and turned to walk back to the cave, while the old man unraveled a pile of rope he brought along and began tying the trees one to another as if he was about to uproot the whole forest. The giants looked at each other in wonderment and asked the old man what he was up to. The old man replied,
Why go fetch the firewood all the time when we can simply pull the whole forest out of the ground, carry it over to the cave, and burn it all up in but a few days?
When the giants heard this, they were greatly alarmed at the thought of losing their forest, and they tried to reason with the old man and dissuade him from pursuing this venture. But the old man said,
I will either have it my way or no way at all.
The giants then agree that he should not uproot the forest, and they will admit he is the winner of this contest too, and the strongest one among them all. When the giants saw they couldn't overcome the old man, they began conspiring to find a way to be rid of him for good. Every night the old man went to bed first, but he couldn't sleep for a long while, and so he lay quietly under his blanket waiting for sleep to come. One night, whilst he lay awake under the covers, the giants plotted to beat him up with spades and mallets into sleep. One of them suggested they wait until the dead of night. So they all went to sleep for a while, intent on getting up later and pulling their plan to action. But as soon as the giants were all asleep, the old man got up and placed a pack saddle under his blanket, and he himself ran up and hid in the attic. When the giants awoke in the dead of night, they grabbed the spades and mallets, each of them, and walloped and larruped the old man's blanket several times, until the saddle crumbled to dust, and the giants rejoiced at the sound of the old man's bones being crushed under their blows. They...
Yay!
Stop! It's also not in the story. But yippee!
Wahoo!
Wahoo! They agreed to throw the remains of the old man out in the morning and went back to sleep. When the giants were fast asleep, the old man descended from the attic, removed the crumbled remains of the saddle, and lay back down under his blanket. In the morning, he was the first one to rise, and the giants, as they woke, one after the other, rubbed their eyes and dropped their jaws in disbelief. At last, they inquired if the old man had slept well, and if anything had disturbed his slumber. The old man said,
I slept very well indeed, except for some bugs that kept biting me throughout the night.
The giants then saw that there was nothing they could do to this old man, so the following evening they conspired to throw boiling water over him, once again in the dead of night. But the old man overheard them plotting again and did the same as before, waited for them to fall asleep, placed another pack saddle under the blanket, and waited for the giants to finish pouring boiling water over his blanket, and then went back to bed once they were all asleep. The next morning again, he was the first to rise. The giants could not believe their eyes when they saw him alive and well, and inquired about his night's sleep. The old man replied to them,
I slept very well indeed, except for some mild rain dripping down on me throughout the night. I think your roof may be in need of repair.
Finally, the giants decided to part ways with the old man, and they informed him of this decision. The old man agreed to this, and he asked for a load of gold and riches, and for one of the giants to carry the treasure and the old man on his back all the way back to the watermill. The strongest of the giants was assigned his task. The old man loaded the riches on the giant's back, climbed on his shoulders, and set forth, homeward bound. By the time they reached the watermill, the giant was out of breath, panting and gasping, heaving and wheezing. As they opened the door to the mill, he let out a big sigh of relief at the sheer might of his huff, scattered the old man's children, and sent them flying, one up to the girder, the other one out the window, the third up a chimney. Not one of them stayed on the ground. When the giant saw this, he dropped the old man and the load of gold in terror, and ran like greased lightning all the way back to the cave. When he reached his brethren, he recounted the miracle he had just witnessed.
My,
He said,
as tough a hero as the old man may be, his children are even tougher. As soon as they saw me, they jumped up on the girder to bring the whole mill down on me. One of them went up the chimney and the other out the window to stop me from escaping. I barely managed to get out of there alive.
and that is the story.
That's a fantastic story. I love
It's
that.
so cute, isn't it?
I just want to know where he got the cheese from.
I mean, if you're Serbian, you always have some fresh sheep's cheese. Oh,
Pocket
sheep's milk
cheese.
cheese. Listen, I love sheep's milk cheese.
Keep that MF thing on me.
I do, I do.
That explains the pocket cheese.
Yeah, yeah, which I always have on me.
Mhm.
So a few things about this story. One, this is a story that falls in that genre of, how cunning men are cunning. You have to know how to trick spirits. And also just because spirits, there's so many treatises, even in the ancient world, around how like spirits are prone to tricks, right? Like they can deceive you with illusions, like just because like they can make physical manifestations that are actually illusions, like they'll give you fake gold that like disintegrates once the spirit leaves, and you give it empty offering, like it doesn't remain tangible. And the whole thing of this story is doing that back to them. So giants or divavi are a class of spirits that are sometimes said to be the children of fairies, vile, and humans, especially like legendary humans. They're often depicted for us as like cyclops-like they have one eye and like a bushy eyebrow. And they do indeed huff and puff. They do indeed, like bring the boulders up to the heavens and bring houses down and so on. And it said that they do live in tribes, so that there's all these brothers who live together. And this is a common trope in a lot of folk tales, especially Serbian ones, where like there's a number of us and each one is stronger than the last, or each one has like a more skillful talent than the last. They often reside in caves and so on. And sometimes they're described as like gullible. Sometimes they're a little dumb, but sometimes they're mostly gullible in the sense that like you can overcome them with your wits. There is a little bit of a David and Goliath thing going on in here for sure. But it's important to note a few other things here too, like the fact that the old man lives in a watermill. Watermills are hugely associated places of the devil. This is where like tricksters live and where javeli, or like devils, quite literally, from the Greek diabolos, live, and this is where they make their homes. So watermills are places of cunning serpents, of devil creatures, of nymph spirits that are especially known for their intelligence. So the fact that the old man operates a watermill already associates him with intelligence and having a quick wit.
There's
Mm-hmm.
also the relationship of millers to crime and like just being generally a nightmare to deal with, like taking your portion of the the flour and everything. They
Yeah,
had a pretty
exactly.
nasty reputation.
Yeah, and as we've seen even in the very first episode we ever did, which was on the toad bone ritual, like millers have a very negative reputation, as you were saying, right? There's something about like, how we talk about like certain chthonic spirits, like the Master of the Wolves, Gospodar Vukova in the Balkans, or specifically in, the Javel, the devil, like you owe him a portion of like your seasonal crop, you owe him a portion of the meat that is culled from your farm, and likewise your millet, right? And there's this element that you pay this person off who's this shady character that lives a little bit on the outskirts of your society, like the mill isn't in the center of the village.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, with the Divavi, like the with the giants, sorry, I'm like trying to read this story in my normal like North American-ish accent, and then like I want to slip into my actual accents that I don't usually use on the podcast so bad with the story because I've read it so many times in the original. But anyway, this whole thing of the way that he like fools them, and like uses them against each other is so typical of like ways in which like you deceive spirits in general, right? You put in dollies that are essentially decoys, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have like you tell spirits like, well, actually I'm mightier than you and here's this reason, and they're like, oh my God, you can take the whole river, the whole spring, you can uproot it just by digging, no way, that kind of thing is really good. And essentially he gains a bunch of familiars, literally treasure hunt robs them of their gold, has them deliver it to his house, and then because he thinks that like the children of him were so quick they were about to like ambush him, but he was like, no, actually, like I made it out of there, I'm never gonna see that guy again, he's too scary. But it turns out that like obviously he just like left a heavy exhale and like dropped all the stuff, so they obviously were sent like blowing.
Giants launching things into the air. Name a better combo.
Mhm. But even like the
Funny.
way that he lowers the cherry tree for him, and then he goes boing, just like
Yeah.
it's launched into the atmosphere, lands on a hair, and he's like, "Yeah, I actually pounced on it like a fucking jaguar. Like I just at it like an owl swooping silently to catch its squirming prey." And that owl was also wielding a riding crop. It was
Gentlemen.
yeah, it was like that whole thing. And then he's like, yeah, that was totally intentional. Which a little frightful howls you may hear tip to you, Karsus, listening to this, you witches and sorcerers having a little, giggle at this. You can just do that. You can just totally tell spirits, I meant to do that. Now don't be, be crafty, don't be lying stupidly. They will
Mhm.
catch you on that. Remember, this guy, his jig was never up. His ruse was never revealed. That's why he's smart. He's cunning, right? Don't be doing that if you're going to be silly about it. And don't assume you got away with it. But you can totally be like, that was absolutely intentional. Like if you do something stupid in a ritual, especially if you're conjuring a spirit, to go back to the earlier, Brendan Navigator moment, like just play it cool. It was all intentional. Don't let them catch you slipping.
I got it, guys.
Guys, I got it. Exactly.
And keep cheese with you at all times in case you run into a giant.
Pocket cheese is mandatory, and also so many riddles that we talk about spirits give you riddles to like solve their treasure puzzles, so you can go get it. A lot of Serbian folklore involves the opposite. It's the sorcerer giving the riddle, or it's Saint Sava, like Sveti Sava, like our who established the autocephalous Serbian Orthodox Church. You literally have stories of him outwitting the devil who lives in a watermill, for example, or establishing watermills. There's a very famous like Svitisava story where he essentially convinces the devil to relinquish control over watermills throughout the year, and he gets to choose one day out of the year where the devil will reign over the watermill. And the devil is basically persuaded to choose Christmas Day because he's like, ah, how wonderful it is that, on the Lord's birthday itself, that's when I own the watermill. Like, isn't that wonderful? Like, I'll be so powerful then. And the trick that Satisava does is he's like, yeah, of course you can have the watermill on Christmas Day because no one is working. It's a holiday. Like, no one's actually operating the mill. So he's just stuck there with nobody to haunt and nobody to prank. So it's these stories of these like trickster-like figures, such as the old man, such as like sorcerers and witches themselves are tricksters, cunning folk who outwit spirits that I think is really important. So the kind of moral I want to pass on to this, besides all the lore we could get into, is like the cherry tree and the giants and all this other stuff. Really, for the sake of time, I just want to emphasize like get good at outwitting spirits.
Mhm.
That is a skill. It takes a long time to practice, but like with your closest familiars, have them demonstrate things that to them look really real that may be more illusory to you. Like we've often spoken about how spirits tend to have a much stronger sense of smell than they do a sense of sight, kind of universally across the board, with some exceptions. So, mask your scent, make sure that you have all kinds of other things going on. You can shapeshift, disguise yourself, there's the famous Thai necromancer, Ajahn Porsalatan, was famous for living cross-dressing full time. Like he lived as a woman full time and he was not trans. He specifically identified as a man. But the reason he cross-dressed was so that one, the ghosts he pissed off would not come back and find him. They're looking for an old man. They would see an old woman.
Mhm.
And two, so that the people he cursed or the people who were cursed because of people who bought his amulets and products and namanprai oil, uh, they were trying to like curse him back, or his competition, who was jealous of his success, was trying to curse him back, wouldn't find him. Like he was a living decoy for himself.
Such a good move. One of the classics as well that I like to do is the what does it mean to conjure a feast? Rolling up on spirits, being like, here are a million illusory offerings. Can do enough to make them taste good.
Yes, 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 yes. Think about all those like interesting Buddhist rituals that involves like multiplying the incense or multiplying the food offering
Mhm.
through visualization. There's so much you can do that or even like it's not my hand that did this, but the hand of whatever, there's a lot you can do to be like, well, I didn't do it.
Mhm.
I'm actually King Solomon, and like there's if you can adopt that for like a better term. I actually don't like the term God form, but you know what I mean. Like it's just people will know what you mean when you say it. Like, but when you become through magician magic, there's a very famous quote by Orson Welles of all people that a magician is just an actor playing a magician.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Going full
Think
tarot here.
I know, and think about it a little bit. There is something to that. There's a little fake it till you make it in a lot of magic. Um, but when the miracle comes, it's not going to be denied.
Mhm.
So I love the story, and again, I was trying my hardest, like gritting my teeth, salivating, like ripping my fingernails into my thighs, clenching, like don't choose something that has a dragon in it. Spoiler alert, the next one does have a dragon in it, but whatever. Anyway, but I wanted to do the Old Man Who Wants to Run a Giant. It's a great one. Go buy Jelena Chocic's book, Serbian Fairy Tales, of Vuk Stefanovic Karadzic. It's so good, and more people should be into my culture's fairy tales. Bottom text.
Mhm.
It'll
They're
Uh,
very
teach
good.
you to put the cunning in cunning folk.
Facts, facts. Thank you for saying that. One day I will do all of it in the original language in my original accent that I pretend not to have. Um, some of you have seen me do talks in which I slip into it because it's impossible.
Mhm.
All right, moving on. So we have another one from you.
Yeah, this is the Old Witch, which was recorded by Joseph Jacobs. And this one is a little less, I guess, explicit in the magic, but I found it fun. There's talking bread, and we all love talking bread. So once upon a time, there were two girls who lived with their mother and father. And their father had no work, and the girls wanted to go away and seek their fortunes. Now, one girl wanted to go to service, and the mother said she might if she could find a place. So she started for the town. Well, she went all about the town, but no one wanted a girl like her. So she went on farther into the country and came to the place where there was an oven where there was lots of bread. bacon. And she came to the place where there was an oven where there was lots of bread, bacon. And the bread said,
Little girl, take us out, take us out. We've been baking 7 years and no one has come to take us out.
So the girl took out the bread, which was presumably very burnt at the time, and laid it on the ground and went on her way. Then she met a cow, and the cow said,
Little girl, milk me.
Oh, God.
You could replace that with Lassie, if you want.
No, it's fine.
Milk me.
I know. You know, I was gonna say let's cut this out, but let's not cut this out. You have to make that cheese one way. Little girl, milk me, milk me. 7 years have I been waiting, and no one has come to milk me. So why'd you choose this? Like, no, I'm fine.
The girl milked the cow into the pails that stood by. As she
Oh,
was thirsty, she
7 years backed up.
So it turns out
a little anime moment, like you know, it's like where like this sparkling like sound effect in the background. All right, I'm sorry, we're done.
the girl milked the cow. God damn it. The girl milked the cow into the pails that stood by. The girl milked the cow into the pails that stood by. As she was first.
Oh my god. We were on such good behavior for the earlier ones. Okay. Okay, I swear I'm muting this time. Go ahead.
Milk me.
I'm gonna come.
No!
It's all on me, man.
It's all insult. This is so unfair.
And as she was thirsty, she drank some. And as she was thirsty, she drank some and left the rest in the pails by the cow. Then she went on a little further and came to an apple tree, so loaded with fruit that its branches were breaking down. And the tree said,
Little girl,
milk
help me
me.
shake my fruit.
Oh no.
Little girl, help me shake my fruit. My branches are breaking, and it is so heavy.
And the girl said,
Of course I will, you poor tree.
so she shook the fruit all off, propped up the branches, and left the fruit on the ground under the tree. Then she went on again till she came to a house. Now in this house there lived a witch, and this witch took girls into a house of servants. And when she heard that this girl had left her home to seek service, she said that she would try and give her good wages. The witch told the girl what work she was to do.
You must keep the house clean and tidy, sweep the floor and the fireplace. But there is one thing you must never do. You must never look up the chimney, or something bad will befall you.
So the girl promised to do as she was told. But one morning as she was cleaning, and the witch was out, she had forgotten what the witch had said, and looked up the chimney. When she did this, a great bag of money fell down in her lap. This happened again and again. So the girl started to go off home. When she had gone some way, she heard the witch coming after her. So she ran to the apple tree and cried,
Apple tree, hide me, so that the old witch can't find me. If she does, she'll pick my bones and bury me under the marble stones.
So the apple tree hid her, and when the witch came up, she said,
Tree of mine, have you seen a girl with a willy wag and a long-tailed bag who stole my money, all I had?
And the apple tree said,
No, mother, not for 7 years.
When the witch had gone down another way, the girl went on again, and just as she got to the cow, heard the witch coming after her again. So she ran to the cow and cried,
Cow, cow, hide me, so the old witch can't find me. If she does, she'll pick my bones and bury me under the marble stones.
And so the cow hid her. And when the old witch came up, she looked about and said to the cow,
Cow of mine, have you seen a girl with a willy willy wag and a long-tailed bag who stole my money, all I had?
and the old cow said,
No, mother, not for 7 year.
when the witch had gone off another way, the little girl went on again. And when she was near the oven, she heard the witch coming after her again. So she ran to the oven and cried.
Oven, oven, hide me, so the old witch can't find me. If she does, she'll pick my bones and bury me under the marble stones.
And the oven said, we've no room. What's the baker? And the baker hid her behind the oven. When the witch came up, she looked here and there and everywhere, and then said to the baker,
man of mine, have you seen a girl with a willy willy wag and a long-tailed bag who stole my money, all I had?
and so the baker said,
Look in the oven.
I'm sorry, it was the dramatic change from your witch voice to look at the oven. I love it.
Milk me.
Nasty.
No! Salt wins best choice of story.
all it took was one line.
Yeah, I know. Literally.
The old witch went to look, and in there she saw the milk. The old witch went to look, and the oven said, get in and look in the furthest corner. Now the witch did so, and when she was inside, the oven shut her door, and the witch was kept there for a very long time. Now the girl went off again and reached her home with her money bags, married a rich man, and lived happily ever afterwards. Now, the other sister then thought she would do the same, and she went the same way. But when she reached the oven and the bread said,
little girl, take us out. 7 years we have been burning, and no one has come to take us out.
the girl said,
No, I don't want to burn my fingers.
so she went on till she met the cow. And the cow said,
Oh no. Not again. Little girl, milk me do. 7 years have been waiting, and no one has come to milk me.
but the girl said,
No, I can't milk you. I'm in a hurry.
and went on faster. Then she came to the apple tree, and the apple tree asked her to help shake the fruit,
No, I can't. Another day, perhaps I may.
and went on till she came to the witch's house. Well, it just happened to her just the same as to the other girl. She forgot what she was told, and one day when the witch was out, looked up the chimney, and down fell a bag of money. Lots of money. Well, she thought she would be off at once. When she reached the apple tree, she heard the witch coming after her, and she cried,
Apple tree, hide me, so the old witch can't find me. If she does, she'll pick my bones and bury me under the marble stones.
but the tree didn't answer because trees don't really talk in human language. And she ran on further. Presently, the witch came up and said,
tree of mine, have you seen a girl with a willy willy wag and a long-tailed bag who stole my money, all I had?
and the tree said, suddenly learning English,
This is not part of the original. Yes, mother, she's gone down that way. Get him!
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Deploy the dryad cops.
So the old witch and her accompaniment of dryad police officers went after her and caught her. And she took all the money away from her and beat her and sent her off home just as she was. And that's the end of the story. And that is actually what it says.
It ends with a little note here that says, milk me?
Yeah.
It does not. I just want to be very clear. It does not. And I didn't really think about the process of recording when I chose this story initially.
We are very serious professional magicians.
Yes.
Professional
much so.
magician, do not attempt to replicate at home. Okay, so obviously great story about why you should make sure certain spirits are chill with you. Land spirits, if they need your help, not a bad idea to do things for them because they can bring you fortune. A little rewind. The ghost I mentioned who had died in the fire. Nothing immediately came about that like benefited me directly from this. I didn't do it for the clout, or for the um particular like boon the spirit might deliver to me. I just wanted to make sure him, frankly, just leave me alone because it was a lot of nightmares he was giving me. But in time, I did meet a different spirit around that same location who was like, "Oh, you're the one who helped that guy moved on," and we formed for about like a year and a half, like a friendship. And that spirit taught me some things about the local land features of literally where I went to junior high school.
Oh yeah.
So always a good idea because again, like the sister tried the same damn trick and forgot that like why would the fucking apple tree help you, dog? Like you did nothing for it. Also, 7 years of that movie like 3,000 Years of Longing. 7 years of not being milked made these guys go crazy.
Uh,
Imagine the relief. Ah!
one of the I think one of the things that I kind of find really entertaining, specifically, is the fact she goes to the apple tree first, right? And
Mm.
locally, where I grew up in Hampshire, just a little bit away is in a new forest. There is a spirit of the apple tree, or I guess like the fairy who guards the apple orchard. And if you piss him off, basically he's the horse fairy of the apple who makes you stupid. So essentially, what seems to have happened here is she pissed off old lazy Lawrence, and he made her stupid, and so she got caught by the witch and beaten. So don't piss off the witch who is friends with the apple tree. If you are also going to piss off the apple tree, that's an even worse decision.
Literally, it's like, hold on,
Mhm.
that thing will obey her. Like the only reason it didn't in the first case was because it was the girl who picked all the apples, like who shook it until they all came down. Great tip. Watch the Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell show or read the book.
Mhm.
Lots of similar things going on. But like seriously, guys, like this is why we rep being good with your land spirits. Because if this ever happens to you, I swear to God, don't come crying to me. When you were
Mhm.
like, why didn't they help? Why didn't they hide my decoys? Like when I talk about decoy magic, which we'll also discuss in my story at the end, why would the tree hide your decoy and not give up the location when the next sorcerer's familiar comes knocking trying to curse you? Because you've been feeding that tree. Because you have a good relationship with it. Because you've been giving it milk and cream and all kinds of like nice products, right?
Mhm.
Genuinely, yeah. I mean, I think that's really one of the key takeaways from this, right? Is like have strong relationships with the land of spirits locally, even ones you don't know. Like don't go in being an asshole. And listen to them.
Yeah.
Because an opportunity to help someone is an opportunity. Like both in an altruistic sense and also from a less altruistic sense and more of like a, you know, it's just good to do those things, and usually beneficial, especially in the spiritual world. I feel kind
Very
Mm.
of
good
bad for
way
the
to.
witch, personally.
She's just getting robbed.
Mhm.
Yeah, like that's the
Hey,
moral of the story.
a hot tip number the second. Don't be robbed. Like, have better protections. Maybe if you're a witch, like, have better, like, maybe milk those fucking cows. Maybe help that tree out. Maybe, why is your bread in the oven for 7 years getting, like, becoming, unless you're making the world's most powerful 7 year long Thursday salt, you should not have wheat. God, I'm so orthodox. You should not have the wheat in there for that long. Like literally just chill. So if she had better relationships with these spirits, uh, the girl would not have been able to essentially, ply them away from her by being like, well, I helped you, now you owe me one. Don't ever underestimate the ability of spirits to come back years later to be like, you owe me one. Square debts. There's a reason why in my tradition we try and square our debts before Mitrovdan, November 9th, as well as Theodore's Saturday, Teodorova Sobota, which is the first Saturday of the Greater Lent. Because that's when the spirits that punish Oathbreakers and those who have not paid their debts come. So make sure you square that away. If you owe money to somebody, even just find a way to extend the debt by being like, I can't pay you back fully, but here's 20, that kind of
Mhm.
thing, just to make sure that you're making progress on it. Otherwise, you can be in trouble. But also, don't hesitate to call on those spirits. There's a reason why witches tend to offer their services for free where I'm from. Like, you don't pay them because if you don't pay them, then they have your soul. They can call on you. So, hot tip, give her an egg. Unironically, a lot of like the stories of like the Chobang, like the shepherds that like end up giving an egg to the witch. She's like, drat. Well, I can't say I don't have something from him. And also, the egg is obviously a metaphor for the soul, so it's a substitute or decoy for his own.
Truly, truly. Don't neglect your spirits, or they'll be bribed away from you.
Don't forget a common technique for cursing somebody, right, is to bribe their ancestors to remove their protection. Be like, look, I'm not even your descendant and I gave you this much food, like a whole feast. There's a
Mhm.
lot of like records that like of Greeks talking about how the Romans conquered them so efficiently by giving more offerings to their gods. Being like, look, they even promised our gods they would still have their temples. And they told them like it would be okay. So, and they gave them more lavish offerings. So of course they didn't defend us and protect us when they came in to conquer. They were like, cool, let's be subsumed into this empire.
Mhm. If I can pay off your spirits, we're gonna talk.
Yeah, yeah. He will have words with you.
Mhm.
All right. And then Key, you have one from Goethe's Faust.
I do. The infamous, famous, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
every German town having a Goethestrasse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this is an excerpt from part one, scene one. This is the from the Poetry and Translation Project, which is the dialogue between Faust and the Earth Spirit that he conjures. Faust strikes the book indignantly and catches sight of the symbol of the Earth Spirit.
How differently it works on me, the sign. You, the spirit of earth, are nearer. Already, I fear my power is greater. Already, I glow as with fresh wine. I feel the courage to engage the world, into the pain and joy of earth be hurled, and through the storm wind is unfurled. Fearless in the shipwreck's teeth be whirled. There's cloud above me. The moon hides its light. The lamp flickers. Now it dies. Crimson rays dart around my head. Horror flickers from the vault above and grips me tight. I feel you float around me. Spirit, I summon to appear. Speak to me. Ah, what tears now at the core of me? All my senses reeling with fresh feeling. I feel you draw my whole heart towards you. You must, though my life's lost too.
He grips the book and speaks the mysterious name of the spirit. A crimson flame flashes, and the spirit appears in the flame.
Who calls me?
Faust looks away.
Terrible to gaze at.
Mightily you have drawn me to you, long from my sphere, snatched your food, and now
Ah, endure you I cannot.
you beg me to show myself, you implore. You wish to hear my voice and see my face. The mighty prayer of your soul weighs. With me here, I am here. What wretched terror grips you, the superhuman? Where is your soul's calling? Where is the heart that made a world inside enthralling? Carried it, nourished it, swollen with joy so tremulous, that you too might be a spirit, one of us. Where are you forced, whose ringing voice drew towards me with all your force? Are you he who, breathing my breath, trembles in all your life's depths, a fearful, writhing worm?
Shall I fear you, you form of fire? I am Faust. I am your peer.
Spirit, in life's wave, in action's storm, I float up and down, I blow to and fro, birth and the tomb an eternal flow, a woven changing, a glow of being, over time's quivering loom intent, working the Godhead's living garment.
You who wander the world on every hand, active spirit, how close to you I feel.
You're like the spirit that you understand, not me.
The spirit vanishes.
I like how incomprehensible the spirit's voice is in this one.
I love it. It's so listen, spirits do be talking that way sometimes.
Mhm.
Really?
like what is this word salad? And I don't just mean like the vocabulary he uses. I just mean like what are you talking about, dude?
Real.
I
Salad.
love a gnome who says he works on the Godhead's living garment. Shout outs
So
to
good.
the episode that we did on Coptic magic. that had the tattoo on the pecs of God.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, by the tattoos of God's pectorals. Yeah, I mean by the Godhead's living garment.
Which it turns out is a sleeve.
Yeah, literally. Ugh, I love this part. I love that you chose it. It's a short excerpt, but it's so good. For all my friends out there, all the Karsists who have done a little bit of summoning in their time, you know this. You know this exchange.
hmm
Wonder like, how dare you call me? And then they just know you by name, even though you don't give it to them necessarily.
Legit, yeah. Also, I love the warning that he has where it's like, you asked me to show up, why are you afraid?
Little another ding 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 ding, another be not afraid. Be
Yep.
not alarmed.
Be not afraid,
Oh,
or
man.
you a bitch made. Listen, don't be quivering when they show up. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. Pure embarrassing salt. He's already there, like tapping his foot with his arms crossed, like shaking his head like the stern dad that he is. And I'm just over there being like, that cow needs to be milked.
You're already leaving the house to go milk the cow.
This pairs kind of nicely with the old man who outsmarted the giants, I feel like, actually. In light of the like who the fuck are you kind of vibe the spirit brings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if there was the old man from the Serbian folk tale and not Faust, he'd be like, who the fuck am I? Let me tell you something. And start like trying to trick the spirit. Now keep in mind, you can't trick every spirit through wordplay. You can't go up to an elemental spirit and be like, yeah, I actually know the earth a lot better than you do, because they're gonna be like, prove it, and you won't be able to.
hmm
Because they know what that is. Like they know it better. They know it the way that you know what human speech is. That's how they understand the soil.
hmm It's like you're like the spirit that you understand. He's like you get what being a human is.
Hmm.
But not me. They are
Exactly.
calling me.
They are calling me. I must go. Gotta stop quoting Exuma's Seance of the Six for one time or another, but that time is not today.
hmm Similarly, word salady at points because spirits just be talking.
Hmm.
Grips you, the superhuman. It's also a wonderful one where it's like adjuring him for his not bringing his imagination to the task.
Literally. Like, dog, come on. Better than that, surely. Good lessons won all around from all of our stories so far. I hope people are finding this to be entertaining as we're going through. We should do this more often, like little story time ones, especially I still want us to do an April Fool's episode in which we are each other, but we were not able to maintain each other's voices for that long. Like Key, you can somewhat fake a British accent, but
I can try, but
you can try,
it
yeah.
would devolve quickly.
Yeah. Salt can't be me for that long. And I could only sound like this for so long. But yeah, we'll figure it out. All right, my last story. All right, gentlemen. This is the young Tsarevich and the Izhdaya. Tsarevich here being the son of a Tsar, kind of like how Vampirich is the son of a vampire. Um, and keep in mind, a lot of these stories, the royal figure is a Tsar, which is different from a Kral or a king, and different from a despot. But I will say the Azhdaya, specifically in this case, this is the evil dragon, or the dragons. It's kind of a simplistic language to put it that way. They're much more complicated than that. But these are the dragons that are slain by Saint George. These are the ones that are trampled by them. This is the dragon that is restrained by Saint Martha. These are not Dismayevi or Dismay, that is the noble dragon. They can be ill-disposed towards humans depending on their relationship with them, but they are not universally so. Most of the time, they are benevolent. People who are pacted into dragon witchcraft the way that I am, and my family is, by extension, through me and through other people in my ancestry who've had similar pacts, are taught the cunning, hence my Instagram name, are taught the Zmajevo Lukustvo of how to deal with these kinds of spirits. Because it's not just my Nishlai, there's many different kinds of spirits. that have these kinds of names. Just they all translate the dragon, but that doesn't mean that they all are the same kind of spirits. So like even if all of them in English just means dragon, the protocols, the offerings, the way of approaching them, how you would subjugate them, how you would create them using the severed bodies of certain kinds of serpents that you kill, but not every kind of serpent, because certain kinds result in you dying or being cursed of your fertility and robbed of your power forever if you come across them dead. And yeah, there's a lot going on. But without further ado, this is a dragon slaying story, which I tried to do a little twist because I usually tell the nice ones where like it's not the Ishdai, it's this Mai that like marries the bride and so on and so forth. Like Seven Little Locks has a really one like that. The Serpent Bridegrooms, Mia Nobajenia has one like that. Bashchelik has one like that, which I love and I've told many times in many different classes. But this time we're doing the young Tsarevich and the Ishdaya. Once upon a time, there lived a Tsar who had 3 sons. One day the eldest one went to hunt in the forest, but as soon as he left the town, a hare jumped out of the bush, and the Tsarevich gave chase. He chased up and he chased down until he chased the hare into a watermill. But when the Tsarevich reached the watermill, he found that the hare had turned into an Ishdaya, and this Ishdaya grabbed and devoured him. When several days had passed and the Tsarevich failed to return home, they began to wonder what had happened to him. So the second son went a hunting, and as soon as he left the town, a hare jumped out of the bush, and the Tsarevich gave chase. He chased up and he chased down until he chased the hare into the same watermill. But as the Tsarevich came to the watermill, he found that the hare had turned into an Ishdaya, and the Ishdaya grabbed and devoured him. When several more days had passed and neither of the 2 Tsar's sons returned, the whole of the Tsar's court became dismayed. So the youngest son went a hunting, hoping to find his brothers. As soon as he left the town, a hare jumped out of a bush, and the young Tsarevich gave chase. He chased up and he chased down until he chased the hare into the watermill. But the young Tsarevich desired not to follow the hare into the mill, and decided instead to go and look for another quarry, saying to himself,
"I'll get you yet when I'm back."
After that he roamed the mountain for some time looking for game, but as he found nothing, he went back to the watermill. There he found an old woman, and greeted her thus.
"God help you, Grandma."
And the old woman replied, God help you, my child. And the young Tsarevich asked,
"Grandma, where is my hair?"
To this the old woman replied, That was not a hare, my child, but an Ishdaya, that slaughtered and slew many a folk around here. The young Tsarevich fell deeply saddened by these words.
"That must be how my 2 brothers perished then too."
He said,
"What are we to do?"
Indeed, that is how they perished, was her response. But there is nothing to be done. Go home, lest you meet the same fate. Then the young Tsarevich said,
"You know what, Grandmother? I know that you are just as keen as I am to be rid of this pest for good."
And the old woman agreed. Oh, my dear child, of course I am. I am also under its thumb. There is no escape. So the young Tsarevich continued,
Listen very carefully to what I am about to say to you. When the Ashdaya comes back, ask it where it goes and where its strength lies, and then kiss the place where it keeps its strength, pretending you love it so much. And when I come back, you will tell me where that is.
Then the young Tsarevich returned to his father's palace, and the old woman remained in the watermill. When the Ishdaya came back, the old woman began to inquire, Where on earth have you been? And whither do you go every day? You never tell me where you go. And the Ishdaya replied,
Oh, my dear grandma, I go far and wide.
Then the old woman began to fawn on the Ishdaya. And why do you go so far and so wide? Pray tell me where your great strength lies. For if I knew where your great strength lay, I know not what I would do for joy. I would kiss and kiss that place. And the Ishdaya laughed heartily and said,
Over there, in that hearth. That's where my strength lies.
So the old woman leaped over the hearth and hugged and kissed the hearthstones ardently, and then the Ishdaya burst out laughing and said,
Silly old woman, that's not where my strength lies. My strength is in that tree outside the watermill.
Then the old woman ran over to that tree and hugged and kissed it lovingly, and the Ishdaya burst out laughing again and said,
Leave it, silly old woman. That's not where my strength lies.
Well, where is it then? She asked. To this the Ishdaya replied,
My strength is so far away. You could never get there. In a far, far away Tsardom, there's a lake outside the Tsar's town. And in that lake there is another Azhdaya, and in that Ajdaya there is a wild boar, and in that wild boar there is a hare, and in that hare there is a pigeon, and in that pigeon there is a robin, and in that robin, that is where my strength lies.
Hearing this, the old woman confessed, "That indeed is very far away. I cannot kiss that place." The following day, when the Ishdaya had left the watermill, the young Tsarevich came back, and the old woman recounted everything the Ishdaya had said. So the young Tsarevich went home and put on shepherd's clothes, took a shepherd's staff, and thus, disguised as a shepherd, set off on his journey. He went from village to village, from town to town, until he reached the faraway Tsardom, and the Tsar's town from the nearby lake where the other Ishdaya lived. In that town, he inquired with the townsfolk if anyone was in need of a shepherd, and they told him that the Tsar himself needed one. So he went straight to the Tsar's palace, and when he was brought to the Tsar, and the Tsar asked him if he was truly intending to mind the Tsar's sheep, and he swore that he was. Then the Tsar advised him thus.
There is a lake nearby, and next to the lake there is a beautiful grazing field. As soon as the sheep are out to graze, they go straight for the field and scatter around the lake. But none of the shepherds that ventured there ever came back. So I'm telling you, son, not to let the sheep lead you there, but you should lead them where you desire.
The young Tsarevich thanked the Tsar and went to lead the sheep out to graze, taking with him 2 hounds fast enough to catch a hare in the field, and a falcon able to catch any bird in the sky, and he also took bagpipes. No sooner had he taken the sheep out of the pen than he led them straight to the lake, and no sooner had the sheep reached the lake than they scattered around the lake. The young Tsarevich put up the falcon upon a log, and the hounds and the bagpipes on the ground beside the log, and he rolled up his sleeves and the legs of his trousers, and he stepped into the lake, shouting,
Oh, Ishdale, come out and duel me unless you are a woman.
And the Ishdaya replied,
I'm coming, young Tsarevich, I'm coming.
Not long after, out came the Ishdaya, huge, terrible, horrible. No sooner had the Ishdaya come out than it took on and wrestled the young Tsarevich, and they wrestled till high noon. As the noon sun rose high and burnt bright in the sky, the Ishdaya said,
Will you let me, young Tsarevich, dip my head in the lake, and I'll throw you high up in the sky above the clouds?
And the young Tsarevich replied,
Oh, Ishdale, leave your nonsense be. If I were to have a Tsar's daughter kiss me upon the forehead, I will throw you even higher.
Hearing this, the Ishdaya released its grip and slipped back into the depths of the lake. As the dusk fell, the young Tsarevich washed and groomed himself nicely, put the falcon up on his shoulder and the bagpipes under his arm, and with all the hounds by his side, led the sheep back into the town, playing the bagpipes all the way. As he reached the town, all the townsfolk gathered and wondered greatly how could it be that his shepherd was able to return from the lake whence none before him had returned. The next morning, the young Tsarevich got ready and took the sheep straight out to graze at the lakeside once more. But this time, the Tsar sent 2 horsemen after him by stealth to go and see what it was that he was doing, and the men rode their horses to the summit of a high mountain, the better to see what was going on below. The shepherd, as he reached the lake, put the falcon up on a log, and the hounds and the bagpipes on the ground beside the log, and he rolled up his sleeves and the legs of his trousers and stepped into the lake, shouting,
Oh, Ishdale, come out and duel me some more, unless you are a woman.
Sure enough, the Ishdaya replied.
I'm coming, young Tsarevich, I'm coming.
Not long after, out came the Ishdaya, huge, terrible, horrible. No sooner had the Ishdaya come out than it took on and wrestled the young Tsarevich, and they wrestled till high noon. As the noon sun rose high and burnt bright in the sky, the Ishdaya said,
Will you let me, young Tsarevich, dip my head in the lake, and I'll throw you high up in the sky, above the clouds?
And the young Tsarevich replied,
Oh, Ishdale, leave your nonsense be. If I were to have a Tsar's daughter kiss me upon the forehead, I would throw you even higher.
Hearing this, the Ishdaya released its grip and slipped back into the depths of the lake. As dusk fell, the young Tsarevich did as before. He led the sheep back to the town, playing the bagpipes all the way. As he reached the town, all the townsfolk pondered and wondered greatly how could it be this shepherd came home every night when none before him had returned. The 2 horsemen had reached the Tsar's palace before the young Tsarevich and recounted everything they saw and heard to the Tsar. Now, when the Tsar saw the shepherd return yet again, he summoned his daughter and explained everything he had learned from the horsemen to her, and then said,
On the morrow, you are to go with the shepherd to the lake, and kiss him upon the forehead.
Hearing this, the Tsar's daughter burst into tears and began to plead with her father. You shall have no one other than me in this whole wide world, and you don't even care if I perish. And her father consoled her and encouraged her thus.
Fear not, my daughter. You yourself know how many shepherds we have had, and each one of them went to the lake and never came back. This one has been wrestling with the Ajdaya for 2 days now, and not a hair from his head is missing. I have faith that he can overcome this Ajdaya. Go with him tomorrow, so that we can be rid of this pest that slaughtered and slew so many of folk.
The next morning, as the dawn broke and the sun came out, the shepherd rose and the maiden rose, and they began preparing to go to the lake. The shepherd was happy as a lark, over the moon, that Tsar's daughter sad as a weeping willow, crying her eyes out. So the shepherd consoled her thus.
Dear sister, I beg you not to cry. Just do as I say. When the time comes, run up to me and kiss me upon the forehead, and all shall be well.
So they set off and led the sheep along the road, the shepherd joyfully playing the bagpipes, while the maiden walked beside him, shedding tears. From time to time, he would cease playing in order to say to her,
Cry not, my precious. Fear not.
No sooner had they reached the lake than the sheep scattered around the lake, and the young Tsarevich put the falcon up on the log, the hounds and the bagpipes on the ground beside the log, and he rolled up his sleeves and the legs of his trousers. He stepped into the lake, shouting,
Oh, Ashdio, oh, Ashdio, come out and duel me some more, unless you are a woman.
and the Ishtaya replied.
I'm coming, young Tsarevich. I'm coming.
Not long after, out came the Ishtaya, huge, terrible, horrible. No sooner had the Ishtaya come out than it took on and wrestled the young Tsarevich, and they wrestled till high noon. As the noon sun rose high and burnt bright in the sky, the Ishtaya said,
Will you let me, young Tsarevich, dip my head in the lake, and I'll throw you high up in the sky, above the clouds.
and the young Tsarevich replied,
Oh, Ashdio, leave your nonsense be. If I were to have a Tsar's daughter kiss me upon the forehead, I would throw you even higher.
No sooner had he said that than the Tsar's daughter ran up to him and kissed him upon the cheek, and upon the eye, and upon the forehead. Then the young Tsarevich picked up and threw the Ishdaya high up into the sky and above the clouds, and the Ishdaya, as it came down, hit the ground, burst to smithereens, and as it burst to smithereens, a wild boar jumped out of it and fled, and the young Tsarevich turned to the hounds.
Go, get him.
And the hounds ran after the boar and caught him and tore him to pieces. But a hare jumped out of the boar and fled, and so the young Tsarevich turned to the dogs again.
Go, get it.
And the hounds ran after the hare and caught him and tore him to pieces. But a pigeon flew out of the hare and away. And so the young Tsarevich released the falcon, and the falcon caught the pigeon and brought him to the young Tsarevich. The young Tsarevich took the pigeon, cut him open, and inside he found the robin. And he held him tight, and he said,
Now tell me where my brothers are.
I will, if you do me no harm, the robin replied. Right beside your father's town there is a watermill, and inside the watermill there are 3 saplings. Cut the saplings down, then hit the stump with the cut-off twigs. An iron door to a big cellar will open, and in the cellar there are many a folk, young and old, rich and poor, and big and small, women and girls, men and boys. So many you could people a whole tsardom, and that is where you will find your brothers too. No sooner than Robin said this than the young Tsarevich wrung its neck. The Tsar himself had come out and climbed to the summit of the mountain whence the horseman had observed the shepherd, and he watched it and saw it all too. As the shepherd overcame the Ajdaya, thus dusk began to fall. He washed and groomed himself nicely, put the falcon up on his shoulder and the bagpipes under his arm. With the hounds at his side, led the sheep back to town, playing the bagpipes the whole way, while the maiden walked beside him, still affrighted. As he reached the town, all the town folks gathered in wonderment. The Tsar, who had witnessed the young Tsarevich's bravery from the top of the mountain, summoned him and gave him the hand of his daughter in marriage. Presently they were married, and the wedding celebrations lasted a whole week. The young Tsarevich revealed his true form, his true self, and told them who he was and where he had come from, and the Tsar and the whole town rejoiced even more. He then wished to go back to his own home with his new bride, and the Tsar gave him a big cortege to accompany them on the journey. As they reached a watermill, the young Tsarevich halted the cortege and went inside, cut the saplings, hit the stump with the cut-off twigs, and presently the cellar door opened to reveal a great big congregation. Then the young Tsarevich ordered them all to leave one at a time, and he stood by the door. As the people came out, there came his 2 brothers. He kissed them and he hugged them. When all the folk came out, they thanked him for saving them and for releasing them, and went back to their homes. And the young Tsarevich took his brothers and his new bride to their father's palace, and there he lived and ruled happily ever after. Okay.
Love it.
Yes. This guy was like, you know what? Gotta get that bag though. They can wait another week while I get married and get laid. And he was like, they can wait. Yeah, I could go rescue him right now, but quick little side quest.
It's a devious lick.
Devious lick. There are so many devious licks in this story. including the fact that he just could throw it. He was like, "Oh, if only a sexy young girl who was rich and loaded kissed me, then I could perform this feat of strength that I was probably able to perform all along," considering that he like wrestles him every day and it's like a literal dragon. But this is something that I've referred to in the past as the Matryoshka doll technique of protection magic. When I talk about decoys, we often do them in hearts inside of hearts inside of hearts. So like, a dove's heart inside a chicken's heart inside a duck's heart inside, it goes on and on until it gets to pig. Or even a horse at times. Or it could be inside like a walnut, which is inside a chestnut, which is, it goes on and on, inside different peels, and you bury that somewhere. And because you are not the sister in the story of the old witch that's salt red, you did have the pact with the apple tree or whatever, so its roots, especially big buttressed roots, did agree to hide the decoy for you. So you put your spit and your vaginal or seminal fluid in there, as well as your hair and your nails and, your eye crust and all that good stuff. We always add like the eye crust too, from when you wake up in the morning so that no one can see you. And then when there's a big dragon, that's a huge, huge, terrible, horrible Trump voice dragon, which Dio just out there and he's just stealing maidens, stealing my brothers, you can
I'm clearly the Smile. I will slay the evil Ashdaya of Joe Biden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm the Smile.
Where
Who's
am
the
I?
Ashdaya?
Yeah, where am I? I'm scared. My God.
Save us, Kamala.
Like we are so broken.
Oh,
But yeah,
man.
make decoys, hide them. The fact that it is in when he's like, "Where's the source of your strength?" The old woman, it is in another dragon. That is not uncommon. In Bashchelik, like there's a similar situation, right, where it's which you read that story, please. Bashchelik or real steel, it's sometimes translated at because it does mean Bash in Serbian means real, like baš je ukusno, like wow, it's really tasty, which is a phrase I taught Key to say when we were in Serbia together so that he would get along with my family. And I was like, they'll be saying this a lot, but it also means head. Chelik is steel, and so Bash Chelik also means steel head, not just real steel. Real steel if you're doing it in Serbian, but in the Turkish, which is where the name comes from, it would be a steel head. His strength is inside a whole apparatus of beings that are shapeshifters. Because the hair can be a dragon. That's the other thing too, is like dragons don't just come as like winged serpents or as lizards with wings. They can come as plants, they can come as meteorites, they can come as balls of fire, as different animals, as foxes, for example, that transform into sparrows, that transform into witches, all kinds of things. And inside their heart is a finch or a pigeon or a sparrow that you have to kill because that's the source of the power. It's Horcruxes, right? For those Harry Potter enjoyers out there. It's that kind of thing, like putting pieces of yourself elsewhere so that you can regenerate from them. And this is also the reason to seat or create vessels for spirits so they can regenerate from a place if they ever get hurt. But yeah, well, Zmayevi can be good or bad. They usually are good, and they're often very lusty and marry women and so on and create whole dragon families that way. Really, the Ashdaya is what St. George slays. These are angry, violent beings that are possessive. They will steal people, hoard resources. It's a little Fafnir-like in that way. But also keep in mind, note the watermill being this place of treachery, right? Where there is this whole apparatus that this Ashdaya is doing for his little human trafficking jaunt for whatever reason. And also, because, hoarding fertility and holding people is another way he starts his power. And also the hair, note in the story with the giants, right? When the guy is flung on the cherry tree, he lands on a hare. Hare are chthonic animals. They are also omens of disasters and weather changes, and pregnant women should not be eating the meat of a rabbit. But it's considered chthonic because it's like the moon. It quickly appears and disappears. It's a lunar symbol, as in many cultures. So the hair there is actually like a sign something is wrong, which is why the youngest Tsarevich, it's usually the youngest who's the smartest, including in Bashchelik. It's always the youngest guy that does like the heroic deed. He's the one, because all these stories are written by younger children. No, I'm kidding. But like it's definitely like a case where like that's the one that figures it out and it's like that's not a good idea. Like don't follow a hare into a watermill. Like no Serbian who knows folklore would ever do that. Also, if you like watermill horror stories, go check out Milovan Glishic's 90 Days Later, which was written some years before Bram Stoker's Dracula, one of the OG vampire stories, but Sava Savanovic. who also possessed a cursed watermill out in Zadoshia, which is not so far away from where I was born, actually. Also, the whole like if you're a woman thing, it's not because women are cowardly, it's because you should never hurt a woman physically if you're a man. Um, Ladies, you can throw down with each other, but the gentlemen should never lay their hands on you.
Mhm.
Huge, terrible, horrible dragon.
Lest you meet the huge, terrible, horrible dragons that I will find a way to send you.
Yeah.
Do not hurt women.
Listen, for those of us who do dragon magic, there's a reason we don't talk about it. Lots of fairly esoteric techniques and that kind of witchcraft. But yeah, thank you for reading it, guys.
Hmm. Thank you for bringing these in.
Thank you
Love
guys.
the. Always happy to German post.
I know, and you and I actually speak German too.
Mhm.
So it's always great. And Salt, fantastic idea for an episode. I hope this was a fun little Halloween bonus for everyone.
Yeah. Hope you all enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something in the way that spirit lore is transmitted throughout the ages.
Indeed, indeed. Remember, be cunning and stay strapped. And keep those offerings on deck. Make sure those spirits know that you mean business and that they will always, always remember never to snitch on you.
Mhm.
Especially if you're like, burying your decoys inside of many different animals and putting your decoys inside a trusted familiar who then hides it for you and like lives for like agelessly under the roots of a tree.
Mhm.
Our Akasha records for this episode are fairly eclectic. I chose Theodore Bastard's Les, because I always think of Leshy and like the forest spirits and the Divavi, the giants. And also Ditch's One-Way Trip to the Sun.
Fuck yeah.
That one is honestly a pick for Key, but also I picked it because I thought of the when I was listening to this while like preparing the episode, but I was also kind of thinking about the way that the old man like gets one up on the giants. It
Mhm.
it is truly some like he could probably have convinced them that he went to space and back, that kind of thing. And
The
it's also
Zadovich throwing the Ajdaia directly into the sun.
literally like it's a little Team Rockets blasting off again
Yeah.
moment, but I imagine the Aztec going like and then it falls down, becomes the boar, like bonk and like boar emoji.
The pig with the smoke coming out of
Yes,
its head.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you for having the same level of stupid onlineness that I have and knowing all my references. Great. So those are my two. And also, if you end up reading the Zmia Milozhenia, the Serpent Bridegroom story, also in the same collection, it's a great one for a one-way trip to the sun, visiting the
Hell
Mother
yeah.
of the Sun. All right, Key, what's yours?
I think we have a salt Akashic record today.
Oh shit.
Real quick. Gotta sound the alarm on that before I dump
Bam, bam,
mine.
bam, bam. Yeah. Get the air horns in. All right, what is yours?
See, Trafalgar by the Portsmouth Shantymen. Since we're, bringing up popular tales, it's also, time to introduce some popular music. And this one is one of my favorites in particular.
Beautiful, beautiful. A little legendary side quest pick is literally Hedemanilig, which is our opening music. A story of a giantess who really just wanted to, the troll who just wanted to marry a Christian boy, and he said no because she's not Christian. Womp womp.
F.
F.
But thank you, Salt, as always, for your Akashic records. They are the treasures that the dragons covet.
Literally.
And for something completely different, a very out there vibe. Mine is Naoki Hashimoto's Alone Infection, which is the main theme of the character Faust from Guilty Gear Strive.
You're such a nerd for that. I love it.
Oh man! So if any GGS enjoyers in the Discord, hit me up.
Mm-hmm. And we do have a playlist. The Akashic Records of the Frightful House playlist can be found on Spotify, also on withcunningcommand.com/podcast. And with that, the license to depart also from Goethe's Faust. This is Mephistopheles' departure from part one, scene three. We've said we would be back. What happens when you fuck around and find out? This is Mephistopheles getting the hell out of Dodge. Take take it away, Key.
He's asleep. Enough, you delicate children of the air. You've sung to him faithfully, I declare. I'm in your debt for all of this. He's not yet the man to hold devils fast. Spellbind him with dream forms cast. Cast him deep into illusion's sea. Now for the magic still I must pass. I could use rat's teeth. No need for me to conjure up a lengthier spell. One rustling here that will do well. The lord of rats and mice, of flies, frogs, bugs, and lice, summons you to venture here and gnaw the threshold where he stains it with a little oil. You've hopped already to your toil. Now set to work. The fatal point is at the edge. It's on the front. One more bite, then it's complete. Now, Faust, dream deeply till we meet.